you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub 2ers, this is William Tingle of sub2deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to. Now, occasionally, we'll get onto some other real estate topics, but there'll always be something here to help you with your real estate investing business. Today is another episode in our Real Investor series, where we feature real investors sharing real stories and actual deals. These guys are investors doing deals all across the country. They don't have a boot camp or a course to sell you. All they have to offer is real tips and strategies and the things that are working today in their businesses and in their markets. They'll share those with you, and they can work for you too. So pay attention and take lots of notes. My guest today is Jeff Coffman. Jeff is a real estate investor in St. Louis, Missouri. He's been investing for several years there and has become a full-time investor now, which is, I know, something a lot of you guys out there want to do. So welcome, Jeff, to the Sub 2 Deals Show.
Thank you, Mr. Tingle.
We're glad to have you. Yeah, glad to have you here. I know you recently did a video for our Subject 2 forum that everybody just loved, and we really appreciate you doing that for us, sharing some of your tips.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
Okay.
It's a little nerve-wracking, but I don't do well in front of the camera yet. So.
Oh, I understand. I understand that. I get questioned a lot about my lack of video, and I said, listen, I operate on an old laptop. I don't even have a webcam, but that's just my excuse, I guess. I'm more comfortable behind a microphone. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jeff, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I am a sort of a techie type of guy. I was born and raised here in St. Louis. I've been worked at many local tech companies here throughout my career. I did a short stint in the Marine Corps in the early 90s. I have been investing in real estate, and we'll get into this later, of course, but some of my first deals that I ever did were Sub 2 deals. And
that's fantastic.
I was kind of thrown into it, really kind of unexpected, and I had to learn quickly. I'm a married man. I have two kids. One of my son is in Atlanta. It is Calhoun, Georgia, not Atlanta. It's outside of Atlanta.
Right.
And I have a daughter stationed out at Naval Air Station, Lemoore, California.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, listen, what got you started in real estate?
This goes way back. I think like many people who had sleepless nights, they sit up and watch television. And this is way back in 1995, somewhere in that range, 94, 95. Carlton Sheets came on my television one night.
Oh, yeah.
And this was actually, I believe it was actually, I was recording a video on a VHS tape. And so I would see this. When I go back and watch that VHS tape, I would see Carlton Sheets multiple times. So, and that is where it started for me. Was it at least planted the seed? Let's put it that way. And I just really thought, wow, this looks doable, but this seems really scammy. I don't know this guy, but I've always been drawn to that idea. I really have no explanation for it. It just always excited me.
I got my start actually with Carlton Sheets, and I guess they targeted people. It seemed like the commercial, the infomercial was always on late nights, early mornings. I guess that's when people are up worrying about their situation and thinking about making a change.
Or in my case, I was young. I was partying a little bit, maybe.
Oh yeah, is that what it was? Okay. Well, I know I had seen it. I say 1,000 times, but in this one particular instance, when I saw it and just reached over and picked up the phone and ordered it, and I said, you know what? If those guys can do it, I certainly should be able to do it. And Carlton Sheets is a really good. I think is a really good basic program. If you don't have a lot of experience with real estate, it really exposes you to a lot of concepts.
Sure. You can still go out there and find some of his stuff. They have a Carlton Sheets website, and there's some material still available online, and actually looks pretty updated. I haven't purchased anything from him, but anyway.
he doesn't sell his basic course anymore. I think at carltonsheets.com, they actually give it away for free now. It's, you can read it on web pages.
Right.
Some of the add-on stuff, I believe they still do sell, but his basic stuff is still available. I can't tell you how many foreclosed homes and houses that I've gone into where there's actually a copy of it there. And I've often thought to myself, if those guys had just utilized the information in here, their lives could have turned out differently.
Oh, totally. It's a kicking myself in the butt moment. Like I should have just followed through with that a long time ago.
So how long, obviously, I mean, you've been interested for years, but how long have you actually been investing?
Well, I'm on my 5th year. I actually started to get really kind of serious about it in 2014. I didn't really spend any money on it until early 2015. And so I'm going on my 5th year here.
So I'm guessing that, like most people, you got started while you still had a full-time job.
Yep,
So
certainly.
you got started in 2014. How long did it take you to leave that job and go full-time?
I quit my job about 1.5 years ago. So I've been, plugging away at this full time for the past 1.5 years. Last
Great.
February, I believe, was my last. I don't remember the exact date, but it was last February of 2018 that I quit.
So how long, I know I have a lot of questions, but I'm just curious, how long did it take you once you really got interested and got in there and maybe did a deal? How long did it take you to realize, hey, this is something that's going to replace my job in a relatively short period of time?
Well, I knew that really early on. It's just all, everybody has that big, and we just went through this with my wife. She just recently quit her job too, and she's working in the business full time. And it's just that uncertainty and that unknown. I had some, I'm a part of a mastermind. I love masterminds.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some real help from the folks in this mastermind, and one in particular that actually helped me come up with a plan to quit. And what he did was he actually offered me a temporary job to get out of my full-time job. He offered me another temporary job, and we knew going into it that I wasn't going to be there any longer than 6 months. So I had a deadline. It was a forced kind of deadline. It was just a jumping off point for me. It actually didn't even last 6 months. I went into his office one day and told him, hey, this is the day that I'm leaving. And at that point, he asked me, he said, how much did you make last month in real estate investing? And I told him. He goes, how much? And then he asked me, how much do you think you can make next month doing it? And I told him. And it was roughly 2 times what he was paying me. So he at that point said, does this really make any sense for you to even stay here? And I think it was just kind of his way of pushing me out the door. He was getting tired of me. But I didn't go back to a full-time job after that day. So that day I left without a job, and that's when I jumped in.
That's great. That's great. I tell you, I hated my job so much. It was incredible. And I said, I've got to find something that's going to replace my income. I had no idea that it would grow to the point that it did. I mean, that was really surprising at the time. I was just looking for something that would pay the bills, that would require me to work 70 hours a week, never see my family.
Yeah, I was an angry person with my job. I really was. I would get up in the morning and I would just hate myself. So I knew that something was coming. Something had to be done about it.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. Well, tell us about your business model. I mean, you've been in business now for 5 years, 1.5 years full time, and people start out, I know a lot of times, not really sure. They just want to be an investor, and they don't really have a clear picture of what that's going to be. Usually within a certain amount of time, they tend to gravitate toward a certain model that they use. So what's your particular model?
When I got started in this, I am what you would consider a traditional type of investor. I go out and I look for houses to buy. To me, buying things sub two is an acquisition strategy for me. It's not something that I totally focus on. It's not something that I particularly target. It is just something that I have in my tool bag for when I need to use it.
Right.
That being said, I have kind of upped my game a little bit on kind of gearing my marketing more towards sub 2 because it's just such a great strategy. But in general, I just go out and look for properties. So my business model is I just go out and look for good deals, and then I build I build around that deal. So some of it, I do quite a bit of wholesaling or signing. I do a couple of rehabs a year just to kind of keep the keep the dust from settling, and the rest of them are sub 2. So I guess if I had to narrow it down to one thing, it's really just finding a good deal, and something that makes sense, and then building an exit strategy around it. I know it's kind of a vague answer, but that is what I do.
Not at all. That's very similar to the way that I operated for the first 12 years or so. I mean, I put out marketing pieces, whether it was direct mail or bandit signs or door drops or knocking on doors, whatever. And when a lead came to you, you pigeonholed it. Hey, that's something that we're going to buy, fix, and flip. This is something we're going to take over and sell with owner financing. We just made it fit into one of the models.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really leaning towards when it comes to sub 2 deals. I'm really and this is thanks to you and a couple of other folks out there. I'm really leaning towards the owner finance model. In fact, we have a rental property that went vacant yesterday that we actually own that we are seriously considering going ahead and owner financing that out. And it's just become really just a great exit strategy. And I feel 100% better about putting those deals out there or making them available to owner occupants, and without having to get my hands dirty too much,
Yeah, well, I think as with regard to just passive income, now, there's very little you can do that is just 100% passive.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, that gives you the most likely suspect for being a
Sure.
passive investment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like just about every aspect of it. I like the passive income part of it. I like not having to really do a ton of the work. I want to make sure the house is right for the people that are buying it. But
Sure.
Once it's sold, and I really love the idea of creating my own equity in that deal. It's got to be within reason, of course, but I really like the idea of being able to say, hey, this is what the house is selling for, and we can get a little bit more out of it because we're owner financing, and so I get to kind of be the federal bank of Jeff. I get to kind of be get to create my own equity.
That's exactly right. I
Yeah.
mean, how else can you buy a property at 90% LTV and look to make 50, 60,000 on it within 3 years?
Sure. Totally. Totally doable.
And that's only marking the house up 8 to 10%. It's not like it's, and I've heard people say, hey, if I buy $100,000 house, I'll sell it for 125, 130. No, I think that's crazy. And I think it's cheating your buyers is what it's doing. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I think. If you buy a house worth $100,000 and you sell it for 110, if you call 5 appraisers up and have them go out there and appraise, somebody's going to get you that 110.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
That's just the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so how many deals are you, if you don't mind sharing with us, are you doing per year right now?
Well, I kind of combine, I do quite a bit of JVing. A lot of people here call it co-wholesaling. So my own deals that I source myself, I'm right around the 20 per year mark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that number greatly increases when you start JVing with people. And I really started marketing. And when I say JV, I'm talking about, I'm out here looking at wholesalers who just really, they don't have any equity, or they don't have any spreads in these deals that they're doing. So I'm picking these things up sub 2, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of what I do with those in just a minute here. But so I am approaching the 300 deal mark in my last, since I started this thing.
Wow.
I just went over my 40 number 40 mark on sub 2 deals. I am at number 42. I'm actually working on that one right now. But yeah, those are, for someone like me, I feel like that's been a respectable number for me, and I'm happy with where I'm at.
Let me ask you this: you're talking about the numbers of these sub twos that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet with a seller, and this is a big question that we get a lot, and I know you've seen it 100 times, about how to present a subject to offer to a seller. What? Just give me a typical scenario for you, and how you would deal with a seller, and how you approach that, and how it works for you. How does the conversation go?
Sure. That's going to be the most important ingredient here in getting these deals done. And for me, the way that I do it, I think you got to understand the situation that the seller's in most scenarios here. This is a pretty traumatic situation for them. And so I try to go in without getting technical and without getting, too wordy, to the point that it scares them off. I've actually, I have lost deals by getting too technical with sellers, to the point that they're just scared. What I do now is I am just 100% completely honest with them. And the way that I go about it is I explain the process. I don't go out and I'm not giving them all this real estate investor jargon. I just go in, I sit down, just like you and I are having a conversation. I just sit down and have a conversation with them and just tell them, when they ask how this works, I explain the process to them. I'm going to come in, I'm going to, in some cases, I might ask them to go ahead and pay for the next month or the next 2 months, whatever it might be, if they can do that. And then I'll say, hey, this is my process. This is what I do. And, if they like the process, they feel comfortable with it, then we move forward. And if not, I just don't make any bones about it. I guess the short answer to your question is just I just go in and be truthful. That's really it.
But how would you introduce the concept to someone? You're having a conversation with a seller, and you're obviously, for me, it was always just a matter of, I want to find out as much about the story as I can. There's always a reason somebody's selling. And it may be anything from, well, we're getting a divorce, we can't, neither one of us can afford the payments. We're in foreclosure, which if that's the case, then you already know that. Maybe they're moving across the country. It could be hundreds of reasons. But when they're giving you their story, they're telling you why they want to sell. At some point, you have to introduce this concept. How do you do that?
Again, I just be really honest with them, and I'll tell them, you can, Mr. Seller, you can bring in as many investors as you like. I just don't think that this deal, and we're talking about a low equity situation.
Mm-hmm.
It might be different in another situation, maybe a probate situation or something like that. But I'll say you can bring in as many people as you like. I think this is where this deal stands. I don't think there are going to be a ton of people out there that are going to be interested in this. Here's what I can do. And that's how I generally will start my conversations. When we get down to brass tacks, that is generally how I'll start my conversations.
So you just say, Mr. Seller, here's what I can do. We can make your payments for you. Yep. Until such a time as we can find somebody that can come in and get a new loan and buy it.
Yep. You got it. Sometimes I won't even, guarantee. I don't like to put in writing. Things change quite a bit, but I generally don't like to put in writing or promise, give them a deadline, to say I'll have this for, 2 to 5 years or something like that. I'll just say that the way that I want to handle this is I would like to find an end buyer here, and until that time, we can make your payments for you.
Absolutely. I never recommend giving a time frame. If they ask, I say, hey, Mr. Seller, listen, all I can promise you is an on-time payment every month until such a time as we get a buyer that can get new financing.
That's right. And don't miss that payment. I can tell you a quick story if we've got the time, about something that I did. That was a biggest mistake ever. This was actually my second deal, my second deal of all time, and it was a sub-2 deal. It was a referral by a realtor. I get into this thing. My objective was this was a job loss situation. So there was about 40,000 in equity here. I figured I could take this thing sub-2 if I had to make a couple payments on it. Fine, I would get it flipped. Flip it. I wasn't going to cash flow it. Get it flipped to somebody else, and I found that buyer relatively quickly. The dates is what got me. So I made a stupid mistake. We were supposed to close on the 15th of the month. And what is the 15th of the month? That is the end of your grace period for that payment. Well, I just thought, this thing will close on the 15th. I won't make that payment until, that payment, the house will be paid off at that point. Well, of course, at the closing table, my buyer backs out, and it's too late for me to make that payment. I am a day late on this payment. And boy, did that ruin a relationship. I mean, it was just the most awful thing. And from that point on, I actually still own that house. And from that point on, it was just pure hell dealing with this seller. She just totally lost all her trust in me, and rightfully so. I made a stupid mistake, and I paid for it. Still paying for it.
Yeah, you make that promise. That's the first thing. You make those payments on those sub-2s before you make the ones on the houses that you borrowed the money for.
100%. Yeah. Hardest lesson ever, as it relates to sub-2 deals, for sure.
Well, so much of what we do in taking over payments is based on trust. And especially in the social media age, it doesn't take but one good screw up to put you out of business as far as overpayments.
That's right. To this day, I just if it won't work for me up front, I just won't get into it. If I know that if I can't afford it right up front, I just assume walk away, and that's the way I deal with it.
Well, you can't make someone else's problem yours.
Correct.
You're certain.
Yeah.
That is
absolutely. As they say, even though you can do it, ask your question: should you do it?
Well, yeah, it's not the best way to stay in business.
Right.
For sure. That's why I always say about a deal. We used to have a saying. I was in the restaurant business for 20 years before I got into real estate. And we had a saying when it comes to food quality, when you check something, if there is a question, there is no question. And I use that approach with real estate deals.
I'm going to write that down. That's a good one.
If there's a question on whether or not this is going to be profitable, I'm not interested.
Right.
I want to know absolutely that there is absolute profit here without a doubt, and then I'm in. Otherwise, no thanks. There's somebody else out there that will take it, but it won't be me.
Right.
Well, Jeff, to do all these deals that you're doing, what would you say is your best source of leads now? I know you just recently did a video for us on your door drop, and actually that may well be your best source right now. But tell us about that for those that didn't see the video.
Well, the pre-foreclosure drops are the question in the thread there was, I think it was something along the lines, if you had 24 hours to generate leads, what would be your go-to?
That's right.
And for me, that is you've got the motivation. You just have to be seen at that point. You've got a time crunch, you've got potentially people's credit being destroyed and further than what it already is. So to me, that just seems like, and particularly like if the house is, if the house is vacant or anything like that, boy, I'll tell you, you have got to get in front of those people.
Oh, absolutely. If they've already moved out, they've moved on.
Right. So I would say, for me, if I had to generate leads in 24 hours, no doubt it is probably the toughest way to generate leads, just because you're spending so much time doing all this driving around. But if you give me 24 hours, I can get 30 door drops done. And so that's what it would be for me. Otherwise I do just direct mail. And I used to run a lot of Google ads, got really good at running Google ads. In fact, I still run Google ads for some other folks across the country right now. And, but for me, it just became it got so competitive. You got all these tools out here now that you can just go out and find out what keywords are working for everybody in the market. All of a sudden, those keywords become part of your campaign, and now you're competing for those keywords. It just got so expensive. So I do, other than the drops, I do nothing but direct mail.
Right. Now, I believe you told us in the thread that with the door drops, you're getting like a 50 or 60% response rate. Now, of course, all those don't convert, but as far as a response that you're getting is that number right, or am I off on that?
You're off a little bit, but I would say that and it just depends. It's cycles. Sometimes I have got as high as 40 to 50 on a given week, and you got to understand that the majority of those are people just telling me to go pound sand.
Right.
And I would say if I had to put a realistic number on it, you're probably looking 25% of those people are going to actually want to inquire about how it is you can help them. The other folks are
incredible response rate.
Yeah, that's why I like it so much. I mean, and I don't convert a ton of those, but the ones that I do, they're usually pretty good deals.
I'm a big proponent on less is better, less is more. Keep it small, keep it all. And when you're only looking to buy a house or two a month, I mean, you could run your whole business just on door drops, it sounds like.
I believe so. And you're probably right about that's not really, I know that's something that you do. And that's something that I kind of admire about you is, you've set that goal of, and I think there was a post you put out there, I don't know, it was last year sometime. And you asked that question, like, is it so hard to do one deal a month? Like, is that impossible? And it's really not. It's really simple. I think it's totally achievable goal. For me, I've got multiple channels of marketing going out, or I'm sorry, one channel, but multiple demographics going out. And so I kind of need to do the wholesaling thing. But yeah, I do agree with you that if sub 2 was going to be if it were going to be my one thing, my one particular acquisition strategy, one deal per month is totally doable.
Yeah, that's something out there. And the purpose for that was anyone reading this can buy a house a month.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone. If you can read this, you have the mental capabilities to go out and buy a house a month.
Totally.
So there's no reason to not go out and be successful. I mean, just do it. Just
right.
Pick one thing, go out and do it until you're successful, and then work on it and just, really hone in on that thing. I just believe that's the way to go.
Right.
So many new investors get caught up in the, the flavor of the week,
I think my big thing about, I hired a mentor when I first got into this business. I spent a lot of money on it, and I hired a good one. I did. He kind of taught me some of the things that, and it was more personalized than you see like these big classrooms full of people. I don't think it's that hard to figure out that if you're going to be sitting in a classroom with 300 other investors, I think it's that hard to figure out that, you're all learning the exact same thing. You're all trying to do the exact same thing. You're at some point you're going to saturate whatever they're teaching you. Whatever they're teaching you is going to get saturated in your market. And I don't know. I've always kind of thought, I've always tried to think a little bit differently than everybody else. And it's probably, sometimes it's been to my detriment. And sometimes, usually most of the time I have to say, I think thinking outside of the box and thinking creatively has helped me for sure. I don't think I'd be out of my job right now or, working on my own if I didn't think that way.
Right. I agree. I mean, it's, certain things that everyone does. Yeah, they will be effective. And the biggest reason is because most people don't follow through. This is a little test that I do in every town that I've traveled to since I've been an investor. If I'm in a town, I'll start calling bandit signs, and I can call 10, and I guarantee you 9 of the 10 will not pick up the phone.
That is true. That is a great point. I mean, you can give away all the free content you want. And I'm kind of the guy sitting in back. If I'm going to listen to somebody speak, I know that if it rings with me and if it resonates with me, that I will implement it. I'm just that type of person. I'm a doer. I might not do it perfectly, but I also know that 95% of the people that are sitting in that room with me are probably, they're probably either they don't get it or they're probably not going to implement it. They're just not going to get up and do it.
And that is true. I wrote my course initially. Well, I wrote it like 15 years ago, and of course we recently updated it. But as a result of doing that, I got involved in some speaker organizations and things, and there were a lot of statistics thrown out. But the biggest one that I learned that just shocked me. I just couldn't believe it when I heard it, but I've learned since that it's absolutely true, that 97% of people that purchase, and this is buyers, this isn't just people in Facebook groups that watch videos and so on. I mean, these are people that plunk down dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars for training or course material, will never, ever make an offer on a house. 97%.
That's insane.
Never.
Wow.
I mean, and those are the people that are spending money. And I was like, why? Why do you get involved? Listen, I ordered a Carlton Sheets course, and I started cold calling people in the newspaper with ads. I mean, those are the toughest people in the world to call.
Oh,
I called and called until I got somebody say, yeah, that sounds interesting. Let's get together. And I bought my first house.
Wow.
It's just some people are doers and some people just won't take action.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of in a, it's also knowing your role, knowing your strengths and everything. Right now, I've very recently come to the conclusion that, I am an introvert. I'm an introverted person. It's very, very, very difficult for me to pick up the phone and call somebody. I will pace the floors back and forth, trying to figure out what it is and how this conversation is going to go and what I'm going to say. And when I get on the phone, it's just never that same conversation. It's always, it always takes a right turn somewhere. And, very recently, I have picked up an acquisitions guy. It's just more about knowing your role and knowing where you sit. I'm very good at marketing. I'm not so good at picking up the phone and talking to people, even though I've done it. And I've gotten really, really uncomfortable doing it. I would have to say that, knowing where you sit and knowing what you're good at, and still getting uncomfortable from time to time, but knowing what you're good at, and focusing on that, and outsourcing that other stuff if possible, if you can do it.
Yeah, I agree. Hey guys, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Jeff is going to share with us his favorite tools that help him in the business. So, you guys, we'll be right back.
The Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Have you ever had a seller give you a house? It's a pretty awesome experience. If a seller wanted to give you a house today, would you know what needed to be done to make the deal happen? Would you like to learn how? The Ultimate Sub2 Guidebook will show you exactly what you need to get those deeds and sell those houses with seller financing. Join the thousands of other investors across the country who learned how to get the deed with the Ultimate Sub2 Guidebook. Get the Ultimate Sub2 Guidebook today at sub2deals.com. Back to the show, the Sub2 Deals Show with your host, Sub2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub2ers, we're back with Jeff Coffman. Jeff is a real estate investor in St. Louis, Missouri, and he's been sharing with us some of his tips for getting deals, Sub2 deals, wholesale deals. He is a transaction engineer. And we were just getting started talking about Jeff's favorite tools that he uses to help him in the business. So, Jeff, what's something you can't do without?
Sure. This one's difficult for me. I have shiny object syndrome like no other, and I am addicted to the website appsumo.com. I probably have 200 tools in there, 200 pieces of software that I could use at my disposal if I choose. There is one, and I am a user of this tool. They're not paying me to say anything or anything like that, but there is a tool that I use called REI Black Book that is pretty indispensable to me. It is a contact manager, CRM. I work all of my I have cold follow-up plans. I have any kind of follow-up plan you can think of. It hosts my websites, all of my email. It just does everything for me. And so it's something that I probably couldn't live without at this point. I know there's a lot of, the thing about it is it's an all-in-one tool, whereas I don't have to go out and get a Podio subscription and get all these other websites and all this stuff. And it's just kind of all combined into one. And I love it. It's helped me out tremendously.
Okay. Well, I've heard of it, but of course I've never used anything like that. I tend to stay away from people they'll ask me about a CRM or something, and I usually post a picture of a legal pad.
Yeah.
And that's one of the advantages of only buying one house a month.
That's true. I was going to say that. That's my, I'm trying to acquire more than that right now. I'm looking for as many as I can get my hands on right now. So there's no way a brain like mine can, understand. I've got to have some help tracking all that stuff.
I got you. Well, it sounds like a fantastic tool. Does a lot of work. Yeah,
it's awesome. Really, really great tool.
Well, let me ask you, when you get a lead on a sub-2 deal and you're evaluating it and, will this work for me? Will it not? What are you really looking for? What is your criteria when you evaluate a deal and decide whether to pass or play?
There's so many answers to that. I do feel like if we're talking monetary, I like to do, well, let's just talk equity first. If I've got an owner occupied home, I'm willing to go up to 90%. That's baseline, 90% LTV on that. That's a baseline number. I will go up higher than that if the situation calls for it. I may even go negative if the situation calls for it. On a vacant home, I usually do about 85%. If we're talking cash flow, I do have a $250 a month minimum cash flow. It's got to, that's bare bones bottom line. That's what I got to have. Mm-hmm. Probably not worth it for me if I can at least get that much in cash flow. All of that being said, I have been known before, and I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I have been known before to become sort of the man in the middle. And I've read some of your stuff, and I know you're not a big fan of this, because you kind of need to be, these kind of need to be local deals. But what I will do is I will pick up a property sub-2. If it'll help that seller out, I'll pick it up, turn around and sell that owner finance. And literally the only way that I get paid is through the down payment. I have done a couple of those. It's not a regular thing, and it's really got to be the right buyer. You really got to vet your buyer really well if you're gonna do something like that.
I think you're referring to something that we hear a lot about, assigning a sub-2.
Yeah, it's true, and I do have my own method of doing that. I have another story about another sub-2 where I made that mistake. This is crazy. I still can't wrap my mind around this. But I picked up a probate deal, sub-2. I think I gave him $1,000 to take over the house. House had about close to 40 grand in equity in it at that point, but they just needed to get out of it. I was actually going to hold on to that house. And at the time I was doing lease options. I was just going to lease option that house out. Well, I had one of my cash buyers off my list. I called him to come up and give me a bid on some of the repairs that needed to be done. And he came up, gave me the bid. And while he was there, he told me, hey, I might be interested in this house. At the time I had no plans I really didn't even, the concept of us signing a sub-2 deal to me was it just sounded like a bad idea. guess what I did? I went ahead and went for it. And the guy paid me $10,000 for my assignment. Well, about, I don't know, 3 months later, maybe 90 days, maybe a little bit less than that, I get a call from the seller that they are receiving notices from the lender. They are receiving notices from the municipality for overgrown grass and just all kinds of this condemnation and just a huge mess. And I had to explain to this seller what was going on, and it's just another one of those experiences, just another bad experience. And so what I did was I came up with a way to avoid that in the future for me, and something that I'm comfortable with. It's not something that, maybe a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable with it. Essentially what I do is I become the man in the middle. I like to buy my houses in LLCs. If I'm going to take a sub 2, I usually put it in its own LLC because I can sell that LLC. That's just one of the reasons. And we can argue the differences or the pros and the cons between trusts and LLCs. I prefer LLCs. It's just simpler. It's an easier sell for me if I'm going to sell it. But the way that I work it is I create an LLC for that property. I become the man in the middle by being the manager of that LLC. I can then appoint members inside that LLC, and then without getting too crazy into details and technicalities, I make sure that I'm on the insurance policy also. So I know that if anything crazy goes on, and I have to go back in and I have to deal with that property again, I know that I have the ability to do that, and I don't have to try and explain this to a seller anymore. I can just go back in and fix the problem.
Right. Well, that's my problem with an assignment is if you totally assign your responsibilities and your buyer is now making the payments to the lender, then the first indication you're going to have of a problem is going to be that call.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're truly in the middle and you want, which basically it's not much different than an owner finance deal where your buyer actually makes the payment to you and you are responsible for paying the lender. However you handle a sub 2, as long as you are the person paying the lender, I think it's probably okay, whether you want to call it an assignment or owner finance or whatever you want to call it. But when you place the responsibility for someone else to make that payment to the lender on a promise you made to a seller, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I may revisit all that. I'm actually in the middle of one of those right now, and what it is, and I don't know if you mind me getting into that a little bit more and kind of telling you my criteria for doing one of those deals.
Sure, you can do that.
So what I'm doing now is I do these microloans. So I have these private lenders that I use, and these are folks that are, maybe wanting to get involved in real estate. They like the safety of it. They like the safety of hard assets, but they just don't have a bunch of money to go out and dump into real estate or. So what I will do is I will take out these microloans from these folks, and these are anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000. I will owner finance a deal to, say, a rehabber. Now this needs to be done locally. This is not something that I would recommend anybody do remotely.
Right.
But I will owner finance to a rehabber. But I will take that microloan out to reinstate the loan if there's a deficiency on the loan. And then what I'll do is I will owner finance to a rehabber who then pays me a smaller upfront down payment on that, or whatever it is to reinstate the loan. That's generally what that down payment will be, or slightly under that. So the rehabber can get into it at a lower upfront cost. They can get it rehabbed. They're responsible for the rehab. And then I actually have a profit share on the back end. My profit share on the back end is if I bring the money, it's usually 25%. I get 25% of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a microloan, and I don't even know if that's the right term. That's just what I call it.
Well, it sounds like you're utilizing something we always just call private lenders.
Yeah, Yeah,
You know,
100%.
they're unsophisticated investor. I mean, they have money sitting around in a CD or a bank account that's earning 1% or 2%. Generally,
Right.
they're people you already have relationships with, and you say, "Hey, I can use that money for X time, give you a 6, 8, 9% return,"
Hmm.
and that's what we call them as private lenders.
100%. Yep. And yeah, I guess that my the moniker that I use is just more of a something that helps me self-identify with with what it is that I'm
Right.
the process that I'm using. To kind of wrap it up, I will owner finance out to a rehabber. I'll ask for 25% of the profits, net profits on the back end, 30% if I have a micro loan against it, and so I'm into this thing for no money or very, very little money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making 15%, and my private lender is also making 15% if we split those net profits. So
Well, I mean,
it's
it sounds like a good opportunity locally there, but that is something you'd want to manage and know the
totally.
people that you're dealing with.
Well, you have to, because you got to be able to put eyes on it. You
Yep.
can't. I would never want to do this remotely, and I would never want to do this on something that I couldn't go and physically see. So it's an option for folks if that's something they were comfortable with.
Right. Well, Jeff, we've heard about the typical stuff that you do. Tell us about your most unusual deal, the one that, the really strange one, because everybody's got at least one.
Yeah. This is an easy one for me. This was my second deal, which was also a sub-2 deal. My wife and I were heading out on a Friday evening to go have dinner, and I got a call from a seller, and he asked me. He says, "Do you buy houses?" I said, "I sure do." And apparently, he had just signed up with somebody somebody convinced him to do a 30-year lease, and
Wow.
he didn't. Yeah, I don't know how that happens, but it happened. He signed the paperwork. I ended up talking to the person that he signed with. I actually paid the guy $500 to release the deal. But so I signed this house up on a sub-2 deal. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I didn't even give this guy earnest money. He literally just gave me this house. It had $25,000 in equity in it, and it was a divorce situation, which I am super, super uber paranoid about now. Divorce situations, I mean, you've got to be really on it, because they can. I think out of all the deals that I've done, these have been the most difficult to get closed.
They can turn on a dime.
It's true.
Everybody's talking. Everybody's friendly today. Tomorrow, no.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it happens. I think it
I'll tell
happens
you,
quite often.
as a result of that, what I do in a divorce situation now is the person that contacted me generally is going to be the person I deal with. We're going to let the other person quit claim deed and sign anything they need to sign right now and get them out of the picture. And I deal
Right.
with this one person.
Yeah, you got to be super careful if you're in a dower state or a marital waiver state. A quit claim deed just won't cut it.
Well, I mean, in general, you see
Yeah.
whatever the
Yeah.
equivalent is wherever you are.
Sure. Yeah. I just
Yeah.
want to put it out there to the listeners that,
Sure.
before you make sure you check on what kind of state you are. There's plenty of lists out there that you can go out and look at and find out if you're a dower state or not. But back to this one, the spouse, the guy had two homes. He purchased a house for his soon-to-be ex-wife, which is a totally just another bizarre thing to do. But he did it, and so now he had two houses. And the house that he was showing me, he had just refinanced so that he didn't have to make a payment for another 45 days. So he was ready to get out of this house. So I came in, like I said before, he gave me this home, and I started making payments on it. I made his first payment. Now, I just had it under contract at that point. I wasn't actually on title or anything. I didn't have it in a trust or anything like that at that point. But I made the payment. We go to close the next month. Nobody can get a hold of this spouse. And she is, and for good reason. There was actually the seller actually was charged in a murder for hire plot on his soon-to-be ex-spouse. And at that point I was just like, wow, what have I done? Like,
Well,
I mean, it just got
certainly relate
crazier
to
and
that.
crazier and crazier. And I couldn't get a hold of her. I finally, what I did to get this deal done, I actually looked her up and went and staked out her house. And she came out in her garage to smoke a cigarette. And I just walked up very, very defensively. I was kind of announcing myself, and I didn't know. This was just a weird situation.
Yeah.
And I talked to her. I told her the situation, and I finally got her to sign a marital waiver to get this deal done. And then after we got the deal done, as it turned out, I got a subpoena from the Eastern District of Missouri's bankruptcy court that the guy actually filed for bankruptcy. And now I had to give him all of my paperwork for the deal that we did. The guy didn't make any money on it, so it really nothing came about it. Nothing came of it, but just a crazy, crazy deal. It's just,
I've had a lot of situations, but I've somehow avoided the murder for hire so far.
yeah, it's not you don't see it every day. And I tell you, you just, you don't know, at what point where is your level of involvement in this, so
Yeah.
you wonder if the eyeballs are on you or not, but yeah.
Well, I would have, and knowing about it already, I would have been a little bit, I think, leery of approaching her like that.
Yeah, well, at the time I didn't know that.
Okay.
I guess maybe I got my story a little mixed up. I just knew that they didn't talk. They didn't speak to one another, and so I kind of, I just looked her up. It wasn't until later that I found out that he was actually charged. I think those charges were dropped. He's not in prison today. So, but
Wow.
yeah, just a bizarre situation.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, other than avoiding the murder for hire, if you could give new investors wanting to get started any advice, what would it be?
Boy, I could spend the next hour talking about this, but I would have to say I could have probably quit my job a lot sooner than what I did if I could actually focus. Stop. What I say and what a lot of people say is casting a wide net. I got involved in so many things, so many different aspects of marketing and different types of deals and acquisition strategies and exit strategies that it really consumed a ton of my time, and it just set me back. It set me back a couple years is what it did. And if I had to do it all over again, I would say if you can focus on one single, let's say it's your marketing strategy, how you're going to market. If you can focus, say, just on direct mail, and then inside direct mail, you could focus on one aspect or one demographic that you're going to send to, and then you can master that and understand completely. And let's say that's probate. If you can understand the whole probate process, master it, document it, systematize it, then move to the next thing. I personally just don't have that ability, and that's why my wife is with me now. But if I had figured that out in the early stages of getting into this, boy, it would have just made life so much easier. I just feel like we get so wrapped up in all of the different ways of doing these deals, and it really just takes away from your focus and your purpose, and makes life really difficult. So that's what I would say.
And I can't tell you how much I agree with you. And that's what I talk about all the time, is picking something and focusing on it, and until you get that down 100%.
Yeah, tough
anything will work if it's done consistently and it's just focused on. I mean, it will work.
Right.
But you just have to do something.
It's truly just understanding core concepts, and you don't have to know. You need to be able to speak to what you're doing. And so, like for me, I learned sub two, and I really, really focused in on it. It's something that I'm surprised from time to time, but I'm very comfortable talking about it. I'm very comfortable walking people through it. And it's just become a part of the language that I speak. And I think if I had that same focus on, say, another acquisition strategy, I would be probably equally as good at that. But I did spread myself way too thin in the beginning, and I would highly advise people to focus in on something that truly interests you and that can be profitable for you.
Very good advice. Jeff, I know you mentioned earlier that you do a lot of JVs with, I guess, wholesalers and other investors in the St. Louis area. I mean, I don't know, do you operate outside of St. Louis, or you pretty much keep your business right there?
I do. Essentially, I do help. So the JV stuff, I do help people in other states. I just did one in Michigan. I've done one in Florida, and did one in Texas. And Texas was a total learning experience for me. But yeah, I do go outside of them. At this point, I don't own any properties outside of St. Louis. I do want to get to that point. And I do want to get to a point where part of my acquisition strategy is going to be helping people do these deals, and I just have to figure that out. But yeah, it's definitely on the horizon for me.
Okay. So if someone wanted to contact you about that, working with you in St. Louis or perhaps someplace else, how would they reach you?
Sure. Just shoot me an email. It's going to be Jeff, Jeff, at heyinvestor.io. That's HEY investor.io.
Okay. And we'll also put that in the show notes so they can contact you if they'd like to. So,
perfect. Appreciate that.
Okay. Great. No problem. Listen, Jeff, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you being on today and sharing the information. It was great information, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay, well, Sub-Tours, that's it for this episode of the Sub-2 Deals Show podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode along with a complete transcript at sub2podcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and maybe give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, and it'll help others discover the show. If you subscribe, as well as leave a rating and review, send me a screenshot, and I'll be glad to spend 15 minutes with you on the phone, talk about your business, maybe give you some tips, and help you any way I can. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Just do a quick search for the Sub-2 Deals Show. It would also be great if you'd consider sharing our podcast with a fellow real estate investor who you think might benefit from it. And finally, if you haven't yet, you can join our absolutely free Facebook Subject To group at sub2forum.com. That's SUB2 forum.com, and it'll take you right to the Facebook group. You can also find lots of resources to help you grow your real estate investing business at sub2deals.com. So until next time, keep learning, keep talking to sellers, and you will get out there and buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub-2 Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com, on Facebook at Sub2 Deals. We'll catch you next time.